When you're learning English, sometimes you think you're fully prepared until you open your mouth and the words come out wrong. It's like showing up for a volcano hike in flip-flops. Everyone else seems ready, while you're slipping and stumbling, wondering why no one told you it would be this hard. But here's the truth, those moments, the ones that make you cringe, are the same ones that teach you the most. At SpeakEase, we use real, often embarrassing travel stories to help you learn English in a natural, emotional, and unforgettable way. So hit subscribe, because the best lessons come from the worst decisions. Jacob had always wanted to see a volcano up close. He had read about the steaming ground, the smell of sulfur, the deep red earth, and the stories of eruptions that shaped entire landscapes. So when he booked a solo trip to Iceland and spotted a hiking tour to an active volcano, he signed up immediately without reading the fine print. The tour was scheduled for early morning, and Jacob overslept. He jumped out of bed at 6:30, threw on a hoodie, shorts, and the only shoes he had nearby, a pair of plastic flip-flops he wore in the hostel showers. There was no time to change. He grabbed his backpack and ran outside just in time to meet the group bus. On the way to the volcano, Jacob dozed off again. When he woke up, the landscape had changed. Everything looked surreal: endless fields of black rock, patches of green moss, and thin smoke rising in the distance. The guide stood up and announced, "All right everyone, we have a 3-hour hike ahead. Make sure your boots are tight and water bottles full." Boots? Jacob looked around. Everyone else had heavy-duty hiking shoes, windproof jackets, walking poles, and layers of thermal gear. He looked down at his feet, bare toes, thin rubber straps, and little pebbles already stuck under his heel. The moment he stepped out of the bus, the cold hit him. The ground was hard and uneven. With every step, his flip-flops slid on loose gravel or got caught in cracks between rocks. At one point, he stepped on a sharp piece of obsidian and yelped. A kind older woman offered him a Band-Aid and asked, "Didn't they tell you to wear proper shoes?" Apparently, they had. In the confirmation email, which he had never read. The group moved slowly up the trail. The wind picked up, and Jacob's hoodie did little to keep him warm. His toes were red, his legs scratched from nearby shrubs, and every muscle in his body begged him to turn back. But he kept going, partly because he didn't want to look weak, and partly because he didn't know the way back alone. After 2 hours of hiking, they reached a viewpoint near the volcano's crater. The guide talked about the lava flow and how the land had shifted in the last eruption. Jacob barely listened. He was focused on balancing on the rocks, trying not to fall into a sulfur vent. But despite everything, the cold, the pain, the embarrassment, Jacob couldn't deny how incredible the view was. The land stretched out like another planet. Steam hissed from distant vents, and the air buzzed with energy. He was exhausted, but he had made it. In flip-flops. On the bus ride back, Jacob took off his shoes and looked at his feet. They were bruised, dirty, and freezing, but alive. He laughed at himself. Sometimes, the best stories come from being totally unprepared. And now, let's break down some of the natural English expressions from Jacob's experience. You heard phrases like overslept, threw on, dozed off, stepped out, the cold hit him, caught in cracks, begged him to turn back, and didn't want to look weak. These are the kinds of real, emotional expressions that native speakers use every day. When you learn English through stories like this, you're not just memorizing words, you're living the experience. You understand the fear, the humor, the struggle. That's what makes the language stick. That's why SpeakEase exists. If you've ever shown up unprepared, whether it was for a hike, a class, or a conversation in English, just remember, the pain fades, but the story stays. And if you can laugh about it, you can learn from it. Subscribe to SpeakEase for more real English, real stories, and real lessons that go way beyond textbooks. And tell us in the comments, what's the most unprepared you've ever been while traveling?